Hello, EDUmagicians. Welcome to the EDUmagic podcast with your host, Dr. Sam Fecich. Dr. Sam is a professor of education, author of EDUmagic, and a pumpkin spice latte fan. This podcast is designed for pre-service teachers. Remember, friends, teaching doesn't begin at graduation, but during that first class at 8 a.m. Let's get this party started.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. Now let's get on to the episode.
Hello, EDUmagicians, and welcome back to another episode of the EDUmagic podcast. My name is Dr. Sam Fecich, and today we are talking about my number one tip for interview prep. Are you ready for it? It's preparing with the Danielson Framework in mind. This framework is also going to be used as a new teacher and throughout your teaching career. So why not get up close and personal with it and use it as a tool to prepare for your interview questions? So whether you are a brand new teacher that walked across that stage of graduation a week ago, congratulations to you, or you're an experienced teacher, this episode is going to give you so many practical tips to answer at least 8 interview questions and some ways to make sure that you provide those examples. So let's go ahead and review. The Danielson Framework for Teaching was developed by Charlotte Danielson. And no, we've never met in real life, but I feel like if we did, we would be teacher besties. She developed this tool to showcase excellence in teaching or best practices. Funny thing, it was never meant to be an evaluation tool, which what it currently is. The Danielson Framework for Teaching is currently an evaluation tool that has 4 main domains or buckets of best practices. 1 is planning and prep, 2 is classroom environment, 3 is instruction, and 4 is professional responsibilities. And each of these domains have 22 components and 76 elements that define and highlight quality teaching. So we're going to talk about how we can align our interview prep with these 4 domains in mind so we can, 1, demonstrate that, hey, we know our Danielson framework, and 2, our commitment to professional growth, and 3, show these are exactly the ways I did this in student teaching or in field work, and then translating that to the position that you are applying for. All right, so we're going to start with domain 1, planning and preparation. This domain focuses on how teachers plan to meet the needs of the students in their classrooms. In this domain, we're looking for standards-aligned lessons. Standard, objective, procedure, and assessments are aligned throughout our lesson plan design and delivery, and that we're scaffolding students as needed, that our lesson is coherent, that it makes sense, and that we know that our students, what objectives our students did as a result of our lesson. Let's go ahead and look at some specific questions. 1, can you describe a lesson plan that you made that integrated cross-curricular planning? So this means, how did you incorporate multiple subjects into one lesson? If you're able to, show that lesson plan. Are you able to identify how it helps support and engage student learning? How did it help support student assessment? What 2 topics did you combine and why? How did they relate to each other? Next question, how do you ensure your lesson plans are aligned to grade level standards? Now, friends, if you're in Pennsylvania, you know you're going to go to PDE SAS, the Pennsylvania Department of Education Systems, Strategy Aligned Systems. That's what it is, PDE SAS, to find those standards. If you're in another state, you're going to go to your state standard depository. And what you're going to find there is all of your standards. You're going to be able to identify what grade level, what they're working on, where they're going in that specific standard. So you want to make sure in your lesson plan that you have your standards aligned to your objectives, aligned to your procedure, aligned to your assessment. You know what your students understood as a result of that lesson. So make sure you talk about in this part where to find your standards and how you use those standards to assess. If you're able to provide specific student data, how do you set clear and measurable instructional outcomes? This one, you want to make sure that your objectives are SMART. They are specific. They are measurable. achievable, relevant, and time-bound. They are criterion-based. You want to make sure that someone can look at that objective and be able to do it. Do you have the materials listed? Do you have the criterion? Am I able to see this objective be done? So again, are you able to specifically share a SMART objective that is most importantly measurable and criterion-based? Another question could be for domain 1, our last one would be, can you provide an example of how you adapted instructional goals based on data? You know, as teachers, we collect data. It's one of our jobs, right? We collect a lot of data. So when you're looking at that data, what instructional strategies or techniques did you change based on that data? All right, domain 2, classroom environment. This domain is all about creating that positive learning environment. You know, the one where you walk into a classroom like, oh yeah, this classroom has a vibe and I love it, right? It's a place where you feel supported and welcomed and appreciated. So how did you do that for your students? How did you establish and maintain a classroom environment of respect and rapport with the students? So in this question, you're going to make sure you share activities that you did or strategies that you did to help build the relationships between the teacher and the students and between students. Are you able to provide examples and modeling and all those types of things? Can you share a strategy that you use to build positive relationships with students? Did you maybe have a secret handshake with each student outside the door? Did you greet them outside the door? Did you ask them about their day? Did you check in with them throughout the day? So many ways to do this. Personalized feedback, celebrating student successes, so many ways to support that positive relationship. Our next question is, what routines and procedures did you implement to make sure the class ran smoothly? And in the Danielson Framework, she talks about having the class run itself. Well, maybe not to that degree, but what types of policies, procedures, and routines did you help put in place, or did you continue throughout your student teaching that help support student learning? Because we know when our routines and expectations are clear, our lessons can go more smoothly, our classroom management can go more smoothly. So describe any classroom routines, share about the structured environment, share about any effective procedures that you did. And if you had used the EDUmagic Student Teacher Planner, you can go back and look at all the policies, procedures, and routines that you did. All right, domain 3 is instruction. And this is truly the heart of teaching. And the framework she talks about, this is the heart of teaching. This is what we do day in and day out. So some questions related to this would be, how do you make sure that your instructions are clear for students to understand those expectations? Did you use any visual aids or a checklist? Did you create something for students so they're able to go through and see, okay, here's what I need to do? Maybe you had a little checklist up on the interactive whiteboard. Maybe you gave your students a little handout that walk through the process of each step that you needed them to complete. Could you give an example of how you use questioning techniques? We want to make sure that we're not just hanging out at the Bloom's taxonomy knowledge level, but we're really scaffolding our students to those higher order thinking skills, right? We got the HOTS, HOTS, higher order thinking skills with our students. We want to make sure that they're critically thinking, they're analyzing and creating when it comes to answering and discussing questions. This can be done through making sure we have open-ended responses, encouraging students to respond, waiting for more hands to be raised before we call on the first 2 students. We can do think, pair, share, small group discussion, lots of ways we can do that. What are some ways you engage students in meaningful learning using educational technology? So what are some ed tech tools you use in the classroom? Did you use Kahoot or Blukit? Did you use the interactive whiteboard? Did you use a cool tool like Classroom Screen? And if you don't know what Classroom Screen is, it's a really cool tool. You can create a screen that pops up on your interactive whiteboard. You can have a morning message. You can have a timer. You can have group work. You can have random name pickers. So many things you can do. I'll put it in the show notes for you to check it out. If you haven't, you'll thank yourself later. It's a really cool tool. Did you use doc cams, or maybe you annotated on the board using Cami, something like that? So what are some different ways you use educational technology to provide hands-on and engaging learning for your students? Another question would be, how did you differentiate instruction for students to meet their needs? So how did you differentiate the content, the process, the product? Universal Design for Learning, UDL. What are some ways you differentiated and scaffold students towards where they were to where you want them to be. And friends, throughout all of these questions, if you're able to pinpoint a specific example, please do so. On our last domain, we're rounding it here with domain 4, professional responsibilities. How do you reflect on your teaching practices? No. You want to make sure the specific reflection questions that relate to that lesson. So yes, those 3 are good starter questions, but what are some specific things you did in that lesson that you want to reflect upon? For example, maybe you tried student groups for the first time. You're going to want to reflect on that. Maybe you're trying a new edtech tool. Ooh, that could be a little scary, especially with the internet, right? So how did it go? Maybe that's something specifically you want to reflect on. Maybe you're introducing text evidence for students, and this is something they've never been introduced before. So you want to make sure you're clear in your instructions. So you want to make sure you reflect on your process. Maybe you want to reflect using feedback from students and looking at the data to see what they shared on surveys, to see what changes you can make. Another question that could fit here is, can you describe a time when you adjusted your teaching based on feedback from students? Based on the data that you collected, how did you change your teaching? Did you find that there's a group of students that may need that content reviewed? Or maybe there's a group of students that they know this stuff down pat. Maybe I can give them an extension activity to expand their thinking. Another question that fits under domain 4 is, how do you engage families in learning? This is a fantastic question. You're going to make sure you talk about any participation you did at the school where families participated. Maybe it was book fairs or literacy night or a STEM night. Share about your attendance and what you did. You're going to definitely want to make sure that you talk about communication strategies using educational technology or notes home, involving parents in the classroom. If you're able to share like, oh, I helped create a classroom newsletter, or I was able to write a message every Friday to families that recap the week, and then my co-op teacher sent it out after she reviewed it. Another question that could fit here under domain 4 would be, share an example of how you collaborated with families to help support students. So if you attended an IEP meeting, a 504 meeting, anything like that, that could help support here too. Maybe you did parent-teacher conferences. That could work here too. So you want to make sure you share a situation where you worked with parents to address, a student need and share any outcomes from that. So let's go ahead and recap all these questions from domain 1 to 4. And if you're driving, no worries, because you know what? Go over the show notes. There's a whole list right there for you can just download and print out and help you to. Can you describe a lesson you created that integrated cross-curricular lessons? How do you ensure your lessons are aligned to grade level standards? How do you set clear instructional objectives? Can you provide an example of how you adapted instructional assessment based on data? How do you establish an environment of respect and rapport? Can you share how you build positive relationships with your students? What routines and procedures did you implement to ensure that the classroom operates smoothly? How do you make sure that your instructions are clear for students to understand? Can you give an example of how you use different types of questioning techniques within your classroom? What strategies do you use to engage in meaningful learning with or without educational technology? How did you differentiate for students? Remember, that's our UDL question. How to reflect on teaching practices? Can you describe a time when you adjusted your teaching based on feedback, either from students? How do you engage families in learning, and share how you collaborated with families? You can also add this out to collaborate with other professionals. It could be special ed. Maybe you had field students in your classroom, maybe support professionals like PT, OT, speech. That could also work too. All right, friends, we worked through our 4 domains. At least 2 interview questions per domain, so at least 8 interview questions here that are aligned to the Danielson Framework to help you really reflect on your own teaching practices and how to share that in an interview. Remember, across all of these questions, you want to make sure you provide specific examples to help showcase what you did in the classroom. Good luck, and I'm sending you all the positive vibes for your interview. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the EDUmagicians podcast. And if you want any of the resources that we talked about, the UDL, the Bloom's taxonomy, the classroom screen, and a list of all these interview questions, head on over to the show notes, sfecich.com/blog, and you will see the most recent episode. Until next time, friends, you have the EduMagic within you. Bye for now.
there you have it, EDUmagicians. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends. For more EDUmagic, check out sfecich.com and follow Dr. Sam on Twitter and Instagram @sfecich. Until next time, you have the EDUmagic within you.